You're watching Morning at N.
Morning at NTV, and it's reality on the ground, the real people, real issues. With me, Andrew Chamagero, Muntuawansi. It happens to be a Thursday, and one of those days when we're actually looking how far the week has been. Well, it has been quite a bumpy, humpy week. Believe you me, it has been one of those weeks where we're trying to comprehend what is happening in Rakai with the children being burnt in the Inferno. And before we knew, another school went ablaze. And before we knew, another report was released where it was actually saying that 70% of senior secondary schools are below standard. And we're like, okay, maybe. Then we took a breather. Then the National Council of Education saying some universities are operating below standards. So the question is, what is happening with our education system? What is happening with the Minister of Education? And it's a conversation we actually broke down to, the students who are actually still in school here at MOBS, that is Nakawa, to banter with us and we get to understand what is happening. Good morning, fellas. Guys, Musembere. Good morning, Minister.
Good morning.
How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Nice to meet you again.
Nice to meet you too.
Sebo, good morning.
Good morning.
All of us, your name?
Wisdom ndinumukiza bigom too.
Wisdom
ndinumukiza.
Wisdom. Ndinumukiza.
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 Yes.
Okay, I know Mukiza. Mukiza is what now?
Mukiza is savior.
Savior. Wisdom the savior.
I'm Patrick Odongo.
Patrick Odongo, nice to meet you again.
I'm Kionliri Cindy Gloria. Kionliri Cindy Gloria.
You're from which side?
I'm from the west, Bunyoro side.
People from the west, their names. Come, all of us, let's say something.
Hello, I'm Moyodi Stella. Moyodi?
Moyodi Stella.
Yes. I'm Naziwa Jali.
Naziwa Jali, please come closer.
Yeah, I'm Josephine Kirabo.
Josephine Kirabo. All right, guys, what do you make of the education system? Let me start with the Honorable here.
Okay, thank you so much. I am Hanifa Namugwana Mpata. The Guild Education Minister. So with Uganda, I think the education system is, I'd say it's trying its best, but it's not yet where it should be.
Okay.
And I want to relate this to where the country wants perhaps the citizens to be. So there's a direct mismatch between exactly what we want the citizens to be able to produce and the way we are teaching them, if I may say. So and I've been doing a lot of Ugandan econ recently, and we got to realize that there is a lot of, should I say, jobless growth, and this comes about as a result of the fact that the people who are being taught today, okay, say for example, Uganda knows it has a very good agricultural sector.
Yes, you do.
That it should measure in, yes? But then the education system is not directly correlating, or rather the people who are learning today are being taught perhaps to be better in formal sector, industrial. So there's a mismatch, because then you have people coming out of the university, coming out of primary, and there's this specific thing they know how to do. That does not necessarily take the country where it should go, or at least what the country wants to
Does that call for a change in the policy makers or up there?
Yes. I think there should be a direct change in the policy. For example, if we know that we're trying to major in some things like agriculture, then people should be learning certain things right from the start. Because perhaps by virtue of the fact that I have been learning accounting from the beginning, maybe that's why I'm interested in it. No one is really telling me about agriculture, so I might not be, I might not have that urge to do a lot about it.
Minister of Education, here at MOBS. Say, well, good morning.
Good morning.
I didn't get your name.
Baguma Feshamedi.
Baguma?
Yes.
What is this look? What do you call that?
It's a trend. It's a new trend. Yes.
It's a trend, yeah? You are live on NTV. Baguma, what do you make of the education sector right now? 70% secondary schools are performing below standards. Universities like MOBS and others are not performing to their best. What is happening?
Ideally, we have to now submit the whole sector to an audit. The sector was relevant at a time when we needed it. So, you see, ideally, with every level, there is a new devil.
Yes.
So, the sector was relevant and its policies at a time where it was needed, probably 50 years ago. But ideally, there is
Hey, Baguma, go slow. I'm not 50 years of age. Does that mean even mine was equally affected as well?
Yes, because by then journalism probably was not that competitive.
Yes.
It was a sphere still lacking, but now every sector is growing.
Yeah.
So ideally, we have to match up to the standard. The standard that we are saying we are below standard. So what is the standard that is present? Is the sector matching up to the current standard? That is the big question. if we match up to the standard, then we shall be able to address what is coming with this new.
What needs to be done? Give me solutions. I don't want us to lament. What do we need to do?
The best solution we can take in this path. If you notice that throughout our education, you first learn everything. You learn everything. Then when you reach the prairies, you learn the skin, the cockroach, and all those things.
Yes.
So when you come up, you take on a specific combination. After the combination, you come to campus and take a specific course.
Yes.
What does that tell you? In the long run, there is what we call specialization.
Yes.
So if that specialization is taken backwards, down to the beginning, so that you specialize right from go, it is going to equip you with the necessary skills. What you need, not what you won't need, like the Canadian Paris. We never experienced those Paris inside Africa. So if individuals specialize ideally at a younger stage, this will guarantee that they will address the standards that individuals need. You have the experience of agriculture, you have the experience of industrialization. Now, this is backed by the evidence that other countries that are setting the trends, are using this. From go, you specialize. London School of Economics, School of Tailoring, everyone is ideally developing what they can do best. Not ideally diversifying in no direction.
In no direction. Wow, Bagoma is definitive and wise.
Yes,
You are the wise one. We need guidance as a nation, education-wise. Where have we gone wrong?
Now, first of all, I'll begin by quoting Nelson Mandela, who say that education is the most powerful weapon you can use to change the world.
Have we gotten enough education as Ugandans? Can we stand strong and we compete on the global scale?
Not really, because education, to me, should be the skills that you're equipped with that the job market needs. And one of the biggest problems I've seen is the attitude. First of all, people think making it through the education line is maybe being a doctor, being an engineer, which is not the case. First of all, people need to focus on what are they good at, what are they passionate about doing. So that's why I find, like, if someone is passionate in music and they chase it, they'll make it in life. You've seen people like Eddie Kenzo, they are successful, but there are scenarios where parents force their children to do medicine, they end up becoming failures. People think actually people who go for business are those that are failed, but it's a wrong perception, because business people actually should be the best people, the richest people. MOBS is the best institution to be.
No doubt, no doubt.
Yeah, no doubt about that. So, first of all, they should look at equipping people with the skills, because there are very many graduates today, but when they go to the job market, you find they are lacking. They have talked about the Canadian prairies that we really don't need. The vernier calipers we faced in physics have never been relevant to my life. All those, the parts of the insects, things that are not applicable to my life. But the system should focus on equipping us with the skills that are needed out there, the skills that we need.
But are you, the youth, ready to actually get these skills, or it's still a question of the attitudes with vis-a-vis the youth on the ground?
I believe we are ready as the youth, but we need a better system that will equip us with the skills that we need out there in the job market.
Okay. We're still talking about the education sector. Just 2 days ago, reports were released, 7% of our senior secondary schools are below the standard. And the Higher Commission of, the National Commission of Higher Education says universities are performing below standards. Please, get closer. Let's have this conversation. Are our deans, lecturers, teachers, tutors, are they passionate about their work?
First of all, I would like to thank you for coming through, for hearing our views. And about that topic, I think, to my extent, they are passionate about it. But the whole thing is, they are passionate, but they also come to us as though they have crammed what they have to lecture us about. So they will come, give it to you the way they understood it, the way they've crammed it, and then you have to transfer it into the examination. So literally it's like a system that we have to just go through and be like, oh yeah, I went through my career, I did the primary, I got an A, and that's all that we are living in apparently. Because if you'd love to show out what you are really working out for, if you're doing BCom and you would like to get into that field, then let them make it more practical at the university. We are at the university, you're doing BCom. Then let us experience that accounting bit where I have to be. Let me be in the field. Let me be in the international business field. And let me experience it. So, because we do not have the passion for certain things.
So how best can we empower our tutors, lecturers, teachers whoever is actually adding a block to this education sector, how best can we empower them more?
How best we can empower them is basically, I think, changing the whole system. Yes, because if you look at some of them, yeah, we appreciate they have aged, and there are certain things when once changed, they cannot be adjusted by the other.
Yeah.
So I think if you are changing the system, then we shall need new lecturers to carry out that.
Young ones.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Nazua, come through. Let's have a talk about this. What do you make of the entire education sector?
First and foremost, I appreciate the efforts being made. We see there is a global partnership.
Where?
The Ministry of Education and Sports has partnered globally to improve the education system. But however, these efforts have all ended in futility. Why? The education system is not corresponding to the job market. Why? You find out that universities, they are just aiming at just half-baked students. They're just nurturing half-baked students.
And you subscribe to such universities? You still allow your friends and family to go to those universities? What have you done as you as Naziwa to enlighten your peers about the rightful institutions to go to? Because you're saying half-baked, and they're coming out, and they're competing with you in the same market.
In my perception, I would recommend people to rely more on the government institutions, because recently Kampala, I'm sorry to say, but Kampala International University had very many faults. It was actually recommended to go and make very many course reviews for the programs they have.
Yeah.
So what's the credibility of going in such an institution? But we haven't seen such scenarios with the government institutions. So they are way better than the private institutions. There are few private institutions people can base on. Secondly, I feel people should major in a certain, if someone, let's say for example, someone wants to become a marketeer, they should intensify more in marketing. Rather than, having accounting, having this, it is not helping them. Why not settle for one thing, perform it best, and correspond to the job market other than wasting time? Then second, when we go back to the secondary schools, why are they performing below standards? We need to look at the lope that these teachers are being paid. Yes, if one is given a lope, by hook or crook, people want to make their ends meet. They are going to be forced to get part-time jobs, which is going to doubt their commitment at the end of the day. So are they helping out the students? They are not. So the Ministry of Education should focus more on those loopholes if they want to better the system. And secondly, they should scrap off programs in institutions, for example, like universities, that are not relevant.
Like what program is not relevant? Nazwa is being hard on me here. We are live on NTV and we're talking about the education. The education sector is actually having a lot of bumpy rides of late. Nazwa is saying some programs need to be scrapped off.
Yes, there are some programs that are just a duplicate of other programs.
Like? Talk
about clearing and forwarding that was scrapped off by my institution. I approached my faculty head and he gave me reasons and I found it relevant in our times. No, I was happy with them because it was relevant in my times. It was relevant. We're back in the 1990s, but right now it's the international business that is more relevant. So that's what institutions should do. And they should also stop. For example, when we look at the secondary schools, now getting an 90%. So what are people aiming at? Cramming. Are we equipping the skills, the knowledge, or we are telling people, just go and cram and pass? So we also need to question the credibility of the performance.
Yes. Well, that is Naziwa. We're still having this very conversation. Good morning, Yabo.
Good morning, Andrew, and good morning, dear viewers.
Now, let's talk about the senior secondary schools. You heard of the infant that was in Rakai and how bad those kids tried to get out, but they could not because there was burglar proofing and all that. The inspectors of the Ministry of Education, some of them have not been in some fields to check and inspect some schools. And they're saying 70% of secondary schools are performing below standards. What do you make of that?
Yes, it's true. Most of the secondary schools are performing below standards. But you have to ask yourself, what is education? Education encompasses both learning and maybe imparting other skills. Now, most of the secondary schools do teach us. They make us learn. They don't educate us. An educated person is an all-round person ready for the job market. A person who is civilized. If Bank of Uganda officials would be civilized, Bank of Uganda wouldn't be under probe. But there is probe.
You're following.
No, there is probe because those people are not educated. They are learned people. They are learned officials. So learning is coming to teach me, and I learn, then I produce on paper, then I get my certificate. But being educated, come teach me. After learning, come and teach me. Josephine, you need to handle yourself like this. When you get a job, you need to handle government finances like this.
You've cited the issue of land and Bank of Uganda there. It's a question of integrity, I guess, right? Now, when we bring it back to the ground, why are universities performing below the expected levels? Where have we gone wrong as a nation?
Okay, as universities, the MOBS is trying to improve because we get into the field. Now universities, the criteria they use to input us, it is based on what we do right down on paper. Okay. You cannot judge me that, okay, I may not be good on paper, but I'm good in practice. Now, if you refuse to give me a course I need because I'm based on paper, whereby I did those things out of cram work. So if the input is wrong and the process is still wrong, the output for the job market will be wrong.
We're discussing the education issue. Please, come through. We are discussing the education. Of late, the Minister of Education is having lots of, 70% schools performing below standards, fires in school, universities performing below standards, and this is the conversation we have. What do you make of our education system today?
Now, my school of thought would be about two issues. First and foremost, it would be about the policies we have in place, the criteria. Me and you know, there are so many mushrooming universities, some whose names you listen to and you want to laugh at it. Exactly. And then actually when you look at the employers back there, look at the people who employ you in your HR department, I believe when someone brings accreditation from such a university, they will not be considered. Why? But then, it's an honest view. Me and you're the HR manager, then you have a student from MOOBS, you have a student from Makere, then you have a student from... you say it's fine to say the names. Then we have a team university. Realistically, you're wondering, what have they been imparted in? And then, at the end of the day, you're going to take the student from MOOBS and leave out the other person from team.
Because you're not sure.
Exactly. And yet, they do pay money. And yet, someone up there in the criteria who offers these licenses for operation actually went ahead and gave this particular university the license to operate. Now, the other aspect would be the remuneration of the service providers. You look at the lecturers, you look at the teachers in the secondary schools. How much are these people being paid? And how much are these institutions getting from students? When you look at all these things, that's why you always have industrial action. You realize students pay a lot of money. When you do the figures, they are quite obscene. But then when you look at the people imparting that aspect of learning into the students, they are given meager fees, you understand? So at the end of the day, these people are also kind of redundant in what they are doing. They do not actually put in all. As she said, people look at who can cook means of making ends meet. You know, our economy right now, it's quite tight. So you find that instead of a lecturer spending all the time they have dwelling on aspects that they've been doing year in, year out, they would rather send you people PDFs to read. They send you work on platforms and emails, but then they do not come and give you hands-on information. So at the end of the day, the remuneration aspect affects the service provision.
What is your ideal figure a primary teacher should earn?
Now, an ideal figure, what I would say would be a figure that would seem viable to me.
Like,
but no, before I go to before I go to that, you would find that probably in my means, this would be viable for me. But I remember recently in the dailies, an article was running on the most expensive schools, you understand? Now, it depends on your perspective, on where you believe your children should be going.
How much? Give me a figure that can actually cut across and you're like, if a teacher of primary earns at least this much from the government, we are in position to actually execute a better future.
No offense to anyone, but our currency is quite worthless. I'd look more at provision
Boss,
of incentive.
I
I would give you a figure, but I'm looking at incentive.
Yes.
What you need in Kampala is not the same thing as what you need in Kweni district, as you said. So if I'm to give a figure like 1 million for a teacher in Kampala and 1 million for a teacher in Kweni, it would seem quite viable for a teacher in Kweni.
Okay, run it around with all the incentives given, housing, what, and give that a figure.
It would take time to think of that.
We are looking at policy here about remuneration of the teachers in the country. Yes. What figure could you give?
So my figure would be, of course, based on constitutional affairs, the minimum wage. That is where we have to start from.
I hear you.
The minimum wage is ideally a calculated value which it will sustain a basic standard of living for an individual in this economy. But you should note, is the minimum wage viable? Is it the actual representation of sustainability in our economy?
Yeah.
But the minimum wage ideally would be the starting point.
Yeah.
So that we have a progressive system in that there is no exploitation of a worker, and again there is no ghost working, in which it's sent and no one is doing the work. Input must be equal to output.
Yeah.
So a school in which an individual works more than other people, or a lecturer or a teacher is putting in more, ideally they have to earn more. So a lecturer in Kampala and a lecturer probably in Mbale, different standards of living, different transportation means other factors are, the variables within that sector are very many. So ideally they cannot be earning the same thing. Just that how we advocate for a progressive tax system, that the richer are taxed more. Ideally also the hard worker should be paid more and the low worker should be paid more, but on a minimum wage. They should not go below that minimum wage.
I hear you. Oh, that is Waguma there. He was actually giving us, where we look about the prices and the figures for the teachers. What do you make of the entire education system?
Before I give my own perception, let me be able to first thank you so much for the platform you've given us, because this is a great opportunity for us to air out what we think.
You're the future.
Oh yes, that's the future.
Oh my God.
About the education system, if we are to look at deep into Uganda, we realize that it has a great structure from the primary section to the secondary and then higher institutions, university, then again we hear professional institutions. But again, if we are to break it down and we see that if the upper side of the education system lies on what you got from the primary section, if we are to look at the people who come out of the primary, we get to realize that some cram. They are provoking the cramists. Yes. So when they reach up to the top, secondary, or those big institutions, we get to realize that we go with the same phase, cramming. Just read, pass, read, pass. That is
not understanding.
We are not understanding. And then two, we get to realize that when we keep on upgrading, ask yourself, do you have the skills that the sector needs? Because if we are to look in the job sector, the reason as to why we have high unemployment rates, it's because people do not think. They are not creative thinkers. What they do is they cram a lot. They be like, okay, I'm going to read my books, then after I go and face the world. Wow, I have papers. If I go with someone who has just a bachelor's, I have a professional course. We are different.
I want you to break it down for my Muntu watching. We are live on NTV, but some things we need, I really consider my people. What is the difference between a bachelor's and a professional course? Because I'm sure you're taking the wave of SCCA, CPA and all that, but try to break it down from Muntu Wansi to understand this.
Thank you so much. A bachelor's is the beginning of that time where you are going to sit down, at least you get status. Now, I am a BBA person, I'm in my year 2, but again, on my other side, I'm correlating with my CPA. I have great passion for accounting, but again, if I'm to see that if my skills of accounting do not start from the roots, what do I mean by the roots? From my university time here, whereby we are meant to know how we are to operate the accounting software. How does it operate? You know, people leave the university saying that, oh my God, I'm not going to a professional course. What do I need it for? If I am an accountant by bachelors. That's what they say, but when they are not actually accountants. Someone needs to do a professional course. Like, let me say CPA. Or SCCA, in order to what? To sharpen and broaden up their minds in terms of their skills. But again, those skills need to begin at the university level, where you expose us on how to use the accounting softwares, the accounting systems, so that if maybe I'm to get a job when I still have a bachelor's alone, I know how to operate the accounting software of a given organization.
Does that mean you don't have access to these softwares while you're still at the universities and
I actually do not see it around. Yes. So how
do we fix that?
I actually ask the government, because this is a government tertiary institution, what they have to be able to place in that system, or should I say that education bit of it, where one is exposed before they come to the thought of, let me do a professional in case to be able to acquire that given part of the skill. So I call upon the government to at least expose us into that.
How will government expose you when universities are performing below standards? The National Commission of Higher Education is saying universities, they're performing below standards. What is happening with our lecturers? What is happening with the attitudes of you, the students?
Okay. Now, if I'm to look at the lecturer part, I see that there are many students who study from now with us. And then after they reach out to the part of, okay, I want to go and do lecturing. But again, ask yourself, did this person understand what they did right now? Or did they cram? They are going to go with the same thing and they feed into us. And they be like, just understand or you can cram. So don't I see? I'm also going to come out and be like, let me cram and understand. Just understand.
And the job market says, just get somewhere to sit.
Oh, thank you.
She was talking about softwares and what, and I was so glad that I saw the ICT minister. Good morning, Honorable.
Good morning. Andrew.
How are you holding up?
Fairly
well.
Treating us well.
Wow. Yeah, let's talk about the education sector. You, as someone who is into ICT and all that, thanks to you, I'm now putting my son into the STEM classes. Do we have a future with regards to the current mode of education?
Future? No, we don't, because the world is changing dynamically into IT. And if our policymakers don't realize this now, then we have a very big problem for Uganda.
Do you think they have enough policies that are actually guiding us as a nation to the future?
I don't think they do.
Why?
Reason being, first look at the starters. Before even you talk of IT or any other cause. Our policymakers, the government is spending below the recommended GDP on education.
Yeah, true.
About 2 to 3% of the GDP, which is below the recommendation. In fact, our households are paying more as compared to what the government should be spending.
Yeah.
I don't know if you get me.
I do.
So before we change that, because this is going to pave way for the government, if we have money, if we have the funds allocated to education, to bring on services that are going to focus in this direction. Yes.
Well, we're still discussing, of course, something to do with education, something with IT. How best can we fuse IT? Because the dynamics are changing, like you said. How can we change that to fuse with the current education curriculum we are having? That our teachers are as knowledgeable as the children are, because of late children are smarter than the teachers.
True. But from pre-primary, this is when IT should be introduced to students. But realize you go from pre-primary, you go through primaries, then maybe you start doing computer, or it's optional sometimes, and then you think about
computer is optional in some schools.
Yes, it is. And then when you get to university, you realize that, oh yeah, there's this IT thing I need to do. And then it is too late, because it's very hard to tame a tree that has already gone up. But I think from primary level or from pre-primary, this is when students need to get to know that actually computers exist. And by the way, you come to realize that the moment you embrace IT, your life in whatever you're doing becomes easier. Research becomes easier, the way you actually get to know content becomes easier, teaching becomes interesting. Imagine when primary kids are studying using computer-aided softwares. They are talking about parts of the leaves, which I don't know if they're important, but they're actually getting to see them in reality with visual aid. I think it would impact them more than someone drawing a funny structure on the blackboard or the whiteboard.
I hear you. Well, that is the conversation we've had today at Mobs here. It was quite a great conversation, but from what I am actually reading from them, it's they actually need a holistic change of the entire sector. If the education is actually to change, there needs to be a holistic approach from all departments of education, that is in the policy making, the implementation, the inspectors, the DEOs. Do you know your DEO?
I have no idea.
Do you know your inspector of university? Have you seen people coming inspect the university?
No.
What a great nation we are as Uganda. Well, from a whole, all we can actually understand is that there needs to be done a lot of things. First of all, the capacity, our teachers, lecturers, tutors need to be empowered financially, and incentives need to come through. And not only that, the attitudes. We need to match what is in the market demand vis-a-vis what we're skilling our generation that is to come. Like you said, the future generation. I'm Andrew Chama, get on to our and said that will take us for a break. It's morning at 10 TV. Mara will be coming up shortly with more of the solutions.